So now let's look at case assignment rules and how to configure those. And so in our scenario, we were discussing this Spanish speaking queue that we created in the previous lecture. And so what I want to do is I want to go into the case object, and I can do that by clicking the gear icon in Lightning Experience from the Cases tab and selecting Edit Object. And that takes me to the Object Manager and directly to the case object. I want to add a new field on the case and just make this a checkbox field called Spanish Speaking. We're going to drive some automation off of this. And so selecting checkbox and then completing this wizard-based interface, each of the steps in order to create the new custom field, I'm going to add this field and call it Spanish Speaking. And this defaults to unchecked. I'm going to tab out of the field label to fill in the field name. And then I'm going to provide some help text. All right, so for the help text, and this would be available to the end user. In this scenario, it would be our help agent or service agent. They could hover over this field's help text, which appears as a question mark, and it'll tell them that they click here if the contact on the case requires a Spanish-speaking agent, and this is used for assigning cases to the Spanish-speaking queue. So it's giving them a prompt to check the checkbox if the person they're talking to or dealing with either through chat or phone or email is Spanish speaking. So I'm going to click next, and I'm going to just accept the defaults for the field visibility by profile, and it is editable because read only is not checked on any of these. And I'm going to click next. I'm going to add this to all of the different case page layouts, including the case close layout that we have, and click save. And so we've created a new field, and I want to show you that in action now. So if I go back to this tab with my cases, I'm going to go to my cases and grab that 1032 case. And so when you first pull it up, it defaults to this feed tab. We need to click the details tab and then scroll down, and let's look for that new field that we just created. And here it is, the Spanish speaking checkbox. So on the case, we have a designation to be able to specify, okay, this person is Spanish speaking, so we're going to double click this in order to put it in edit mode. This is sometimes referred to as inline editing, and then click save. So we now have a case that has this checkbox checked. Let's then go in and let's create an assignment rule so that automatically if a case has Spanish speaking checked, like a new case that comes in with this checked, it will assign ownership to the Spanish speaking queue. And then also one other note is you may want to think about adding to the contact record a checkbox as well, so that you could record this information about the person that all their cases require a Spanish-speaking agent. And you could do further automation to connect that anytime a contact with Spanish-speaking is checked, it automatically creates the Spanish-speaking case and checks this box automatically upon subsequent cases that are created. But at this point, we're not going to worry about that level of complexity and just get into the case assignment rules. So I'm going to go to Setup by clicking the gear icon and selecting Setup. And let's type in Assign. And you see there's different types of assignment rules here. And we're dealing with case assignment rules, so I'm going to select that. And then we've got a standard case assignment rule in our org. So I'm going to click on that rule and look at the different settings that we have. And I think that this came out of the box with the free developer account, and there's all these different rule entries. And I'm going to delete these real quick and we'll just start fresh. So feel free to do the same in your own organization. You've got your standard case assignment rule, and then you've got several different rule entries. And this is a common point of confusion is, how many case assignment rules can you have? And you notice here that this is the active one. And you've got one active case assignment rule. If I go back to case assignment rules, I can create another one. I'm going to call this Spanish speaking. But what you'll notice is you can only have one active assignment rule in your entire organization. Okay, and so when you activate one, it deactivates the other. And so you can only have one active case assignment rule in your entire org, and then you can go in and specify the rule entries and specify what happens when things match that criteria. So going back to my case assignment rules screen, I activated my Spanish speaking rule and deactivated standard. And so if I go into my Spanish speaking rule, I'm going to create a new rule entry, and we'll give this sort order of 1. These are the order in which they're evaluated. So we select the criteria for this rule entry, either when the criteria is met or the formula evaluates to true. And so I'm going to insert a field here off of the case called Spanish speaking, and then we can insert an operator. And so I'm just selecting equals. So you can either enter that manually or select it from the insert operator. And then if it's true or if it's checked, if the Spanish speaking checkbox is checked on the case, I'm going to check the syntax of this. There's no errors found here in the formula. But then I need to assign this to a queue. And for that queue that I'm assigning this to, I'm going to assign it to the Spanish speaking queue. So I select Spanish speaking from the queue that I previously created. I can also specify an email template to use if I need to email them. You can also select predefined case teams to add to the case, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to click Save. And so the rule entry criteria, the first one is if the Spanish speaking checkbox equals true, then assign it to the Spanish speaking queue. Now I'm going to add other rules. This sort order is going to be 2, and if this criteria is met, I'm just going to do things a little differently here and not do a formula. So if the case origin in this example equals email, then I'm going to assign this to the email queue. If you remember, I created a few different queues, not just Spanish speaking, but also email, and I believe social was the other one. So I'm going to click that to select that, and then I'm going to click Save. So now we have our 1 case assignment rule, and we have 2 rule entries. And so we're going to do a third one, and we're going to do a social with a sort order of 3. So case origin equals social. We're going to assign this to the queue social and click Save. And then finally, we're going to do a 4th rule entry, and this will be kind of serve as our catch-all. You want to really try and account for everything. And so I'm going to set case origin not equal to email. I'm going to set case origin not equal to social. And I'm also going to set Spanish speaking to false or not equal to true. So if Spanish speaking is not checked and the case origin is not equal to social or email, I need to add filter logic to make these or statements instead of and statements. So it's 1 or 2 or 3. So any combination of any of these evaluating to true, then what's going to happen is going to assign these cases to someone. And so I want to assign these cases that don't fall under these different categories to myself. You could add these to a different queue if you wanted, but I'm going to assign these to a user instead of a queue in this example. So I'm going to select myself from the search here, the user search. I could also add case teams, and I don't remember if we even have case teams set up or not. Let me do a search here real quick to look and see if we have case teams created. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have those set up. So I'm not going to set up any predefined case teams at this time and just click Save. And so now we have our 1 active case assignment rule. And you notice how this is poorly named at this point because we're evaluating not only Spanish speaking, but we're also checking to see if the case origin was email or social, and then for all others, assign those to me. And so let's just edit this and rename this main. This is our main case assignment rule. And it is active. So if we go back to our case assignment rules, we have our old standard one that was out of the box, and then we've got our main one. I'm going to delete standard and click OK. So I just have the 1. And the main thing to be aware of is there's only 1 case assignment rule with multiple criteria, and you want to try and set a catch-all. So now let's put this to the test and see if we can verify that our case assignment rules are working. And we're going to do that by going to the app launcher and going to the service application and creating a few new cases. And so I'm going to select new case. So now let's select the record type of this new case, and we're going to select social, but remember we need to select the case origin as well. And ideally we would set this case origin to automatically be social. I've not wired that in yet, but we're going to go ahead and select social here from the case origin, and then also look for any other required fields we may have, such as product here. I'm just going to select one at random and type. It doesn't really matter. Scroll down. And here's Spanish speaking. I'm not going to check that because we're just checking for the social evaluation of the assignment rule. And you might be wondering, well, what would happen if it was social and Spanish speaking? I believe what would happen is that it would assign to the Spanish speaking queue because it's evaluated first. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that, I guess, and we'll see what happens and see who gets ownership of this case. Now, one thing to note is your assignment rules will not activate unless you check this box down here. I don't think this is great usability. You have to know to check this to assign using active assignment rules. There's ways to set this automatically to be checked, but out of the box, it's not checked. I think it should default to being checked always, and then the user unassigning it if they don't want to use the active assignment rules. There's probably some logic behind that I'm not aware of, but anyways, I'm going to click save and let's see who this case is assigned to. And so, as I speculated, it did evaluate the Spanish speaking assignment rule and that won out because that evaluated first. And so, since this is a Spanish speaking case and it was social from the case origin, rather than going to the social queue and running the risk of someone that doesn't speak Spanish taking ownership, it's going to the Spanish speaking queue instead. And so, let's check out another case and make it social but not do Spanish speaking and make sure that this works. And so this is kind of typical behavior that you'll find yourself having to do as a consultant or an administrator or developer on the platform is you'll create some solution and then you need to test it out. And usually you'll be doing this in a sandbox environment and not in production. So I'm going to leave Spanish speaking unchecked. I'm going to remember to check assign using an active assignment rule and click save. And we did the case origin as social, so we should see social as the owner, and we do see social as the case owner. Now remember, that is the queue that we created previously. So finally, before we move on to the next lecture, which is dealing with omnichannel for routing of cases, we need to look at how to set that assign using active assignment rules box by default. So you can turn this checkbox on by default by setting it in the page layout. And so I'm going to go into setup and I need to get to this object quickly. So I selected edit object. That takes me to the object manager for the case that I'm on, and then I'm going to select page layouts. So under case page layouts, we've got our different page layouts. On the case I was on, that's the social case. And so I'm going to look at my page layout assignments to remind myself of which page layout I have assigned for social cases for the system administrator profile. And so if I click next to go over to the right and select social, we have this particular page layout assigned for the social case record type, and that's case support layout. So I'm going to click on that to go to the page layout editor for that particular page layout. And so now we want to click the layout properties button. It's really easy to forget where this is at. I forget where this is at all the time. So click layout properties. So this case assignment checkbox, we have this showing on the edit page or new page because it's where you are able to make edits to a field. And so we're showing this on the edit page. We also want it to be checked by default and click OK and click save. And let's test this out and make sure that it works. So I'm going to go back to a tab that has my cases tab available here and select new case, and I'm going to select social. I'm going to click next. That brings up the page layout, the edit page layout for the social record type for cases, which was that one page layout that we just changed. And now you notice this is checked by default. So that's how you set that. And it's very helpful. And once again, that is done by way of going into the page layout editor for the page layout that you're on and clicking layout properties and selecting this default checkbox here. So now that we've covered the case assignment rules and how to configure those and how to set this by default so that the assignment rules are actually firing, now it's time to get deeper into other routing options for cases, and that deals with omnichannel, which is coming up in the next lecture.